20 years ago, The Devil Wears Prada was released, and it was a revelation, a pop culture event, and a breakout moment for the cast and the industry as a whole. In the 2 decades since, high-end fashion brands have exploded in price and relevance, and the profile of Anna Wintour has gone from beyond the houses of fashion into the houses of the people. On the other side, journalism has taken a slide, and the magazine world in particular has been rocked by layoffs and pivots to digital. So with us comparing the times between then and now, how does The Devil Wears Prada 2 compare to the original? And is it couture or the cinematic equivalent of a knockoff? I'm Cory, and this is my filmmaker perspective. Up front, I would like to express my love for the original movie, and specifically the writing of the first movie. I'm a big fan of Aline Brosh McKenna, and she did with the 2006 film was fantastic. It was tremendously approachable to an unapproachable world, and the space it created to let the cast run is something that is worlds more difficult than it would appear to from the outside eye. Much like there are many who look at the $2,700 Prada t-shirt and say to themselves, I can do that, the success of the movie, and the Miranda Priestly in particular, requires certain things beyond hiring Meryl Streep. Take the famous belt monologue, just for a small example. There are words that Miranda can't say. She took exception to Andy using the word stuff right at the very beginning because the choices are important. And to say stuff is to minimize, and that's not the modus operandi at Runway. Meryl's moment where she nails that speech is because everything was done right leading up to that. And you gave one of the greatest actors in the world has ever seen a fastball down the middle and she drilled it into the seats. A lot of sequels in this vein fall because the characters feel different who they were. And yes, people change and grow and slow down over the years, but they don't become completely different people. I think Aline did a fantastic job of keeping these characters true to themselves while also showing how they have changed within the line she constructed. I think the thing is the first movie caught the world at just the right time, and it had the approachability of a rom-com while being a sharp and funny critique of a place we don't get to see. This time around, the characters are solidly in their shoes. We have circumstances that make the time to come back to them, and the approachability of the movie is similar to the one we already know and love. All of that comes together in a thoroughly enjoyable sequel, and something that I imagine will be well received over time. The only things it doesn't have that it's not new, it's not catching people off guard at the exact right moment, and it's coming in with high expectations. This will always make a sequel feel less than the original in nearly every film. The other thing is lacking that extra 5%, because going back to giving Meryl things to work with, these speeches and one-liners were slightly better than what we got in the sequel. That is not to say that Aline is 5% worse than she was before, but rather that her hard work hit the perfect wave, and the wave this time around was not the same, but the effort and ability were. I really enjoyed the choices that have been made with where the characters are now. To have Runway magazine at its pinnacle before and a push to digital in the follow-up is a great way to kickstart the stakes. There was one thing I missed. It was Miranda didn't mold someone like Andy in this film. I don't want to say it was a mistake not to have more of it, because frankly, I don't see how it could be half measure. Make it part of the story would mean changing everything. But I feel that the relationship element was some of the secret sauce of the first movie. What it did for me is this concept, like there are only a small number of people who can do with the thing. And if you recognize that ability in someone underneath you, nothing should stand in the way of getting the most out of them, including being intentionally hard on them. We love Andy. She's our hero in the movie. And by the end of the first, she leaves Miranda in a setup for her career to come. And in the second, she is winning awards for her journalism, only to come back and now try and save Miranda. She is in this position now because she had Miranda riding her. You might think of Nigel giving you the "you are not doing a good job" speech, but he gave that speech because Miranda was hard on Nigel too. She built a culture, not just on the pages of the magazine, but in the halls of her building. The Devil Wears Prada and Whiplash would make a tremendous double feature. I don't often talk about the attractiveness of the cast or someone being older or any of these things that are out of the control of the actors, because I don't find that it is fair or necessary to be talking about in the movie, but I make an exception here, but entirely out of a place of positivity. This cast has aged remarkably well, and one of the great gifts to the series is that they all look like older, but not old, versions of their 2006 selves. I rewatched the original the other day. after seeing the sequel, and it was barely noticeable that 20 years had come and gone. Anne Hathaway is our hero as always, and the wheels start turning to get us into the plot of this movie right away, which I appreciate. Again, all these actors have such a fine nose for their characters, but Anne Hathaway is the thing that makes it work. She is the touchstone, because even though Meryl gets the big, loudest moments, it's her ability to ground Andy that makes everything possible. The only thing is that Andy was not operating at the peak of her powers in the first movie, and now very much is. So the ability for her to be humiliated and dismissed is not the same, which makes things harder for the story in the second. As a writer, you want to keep making things worse and worse for the hero. And then finally, when it can't get any worse, they break free and become the blank they were always meant to be and defeat the villain. This works for Andy in the first movie because she is brand new. So when she makes a mistake or asks a dumb question, it throws a wrench in the highly efficient life they lead. But the mistakes are what makes us feel like Andy, because the audience is just as dumb as she is. Andy, the award-winning journalist, is great for the sequel, though, because we needed to see her making something of herself in the field. And now the thing to be overcome can be because she is capable now in a way she wasn't when Runway was her first professional job. Formerly, across the room from one another, and now across the fashion line of demarcation, Emily is now a player inside the House of Dior. Emily was always going to be the toughest nut to crack because everyone else's path was so clear. Andy was going to be bigger and better things, Miranda and Nigel were going to be at Runway forever, and only Emily was a little bit in question because she was still assistant when we last left her. The line you can get from a job after a year here was certainly true for the character of Emily as much as it was for the Emily Blunt, because her work in the original, she has become a huge star in her own right. Her turn as the villain of this movie worked really well, and I really like how these movies have Andy continuously getting the best of Emily. Like, if we keep going, Devil Wears Prada 9 will be about Emily trying to blow up the moon and Andy foiling it all. Meryl is Meryl, one of the finest actors ever, is just as good as ever in this character that was tailored for her like all the outfits were. As long as it's Meryl Streep and Aline Brosh McKenna together, I will be there to watch it, because the two of them really bring a character together. Likewise, Stanley Tucci as Nigel, just as lovely as always, and I really like the relationships he holds for Andy and the one he holds for Miranda, like bespoke friendships. All the newcomers are very hit or miss, and I don't think it's all that surprising because it's always difficult to bring in new people to the circle you already know and love. Kenneth Branagh as Miranda's new husband is fine, but his main character point is to be supportive of Miranda, which makes him a little bit thin. Similarly, Justin Theroux as Benji Barnes, who plays an Elon Musk type, gets more time to try and do something, but unfortunately I think his character was an amalgamation of too many people, and in the end it felt like it wasn't a wholly independent character. Having Tracy Toms back was great too, because she added a lot by being more interconnections from the original to the sequel. Also happy to see Rachel Bloom. I thought she was great in a more limited role. Only two new characters really didn't land for me. Patrick Bramwell as Peter and Helen Shen as Jin Chao. Starting with Jin Chao, I'm not saying the character is stereotypical, but I think there are other things that could have made her work a little better. If when she introduced herself, she had said that she had went to Northwestern instead of Yale, I think that would have made the character more relatable to Andy and less of like an Ivy League all-cost type. As far as Peter goes, there is a lot to like, but for some reason, it doesn't work all that well. He's more of a normal guy in appearance and attitude over Adrian Grenier and Simon Baker in the original, which I appreciate. I think there was a chance of it becoming more Sex in the City if Andy is jumping from heartthrob to heartthrob, and her finding someone nice and kind is something I think would be nice to see more in movies. Unfortunately, in this one, the alchemy just doesn't seem right, and it's not like Patrick Bramwell did a bad job, it just didn't click the way it was intended. These small things not working is an example of not hitting the perfect wave, like I had said earlier. There are really only two things that didn't work for me, and again, I don't hold anyone responsible for these things, because for the most part, I thought director David Frankel and the crew behind this movie did a great job. First among them is that if you ever wanted to see the difference between shooting on film and shooting digitally, watch these two back to back. The visual style of both movies have always favored more of like a rom-com aesthetic, which is to say that capturing innovative shots isn't usually the point. You want to create a flat look lighting wise, and usually you want to stick to a standard wide, two shot, over the shoulder, insert, close up type setups. Not slamming that. I love a good rom com. But why it works here is because it's kind of a neutral look in terms of a movie look. It's not a no budget indie, and it's not Gordon Willis, but it's somewhere in between. I like digital for for a lot of things. I think it works just as fine. But the look of this movie is no doubt going to the film one. One reason I always want New York on film. The grittiness of New York deserves film grain to show it for the beauty that it once had before it became a Duane Reade. There are plenty of callback shots you can use to compare the before and after, and the movie looked better before. Another one that bothered me is the transition from helicopters to drones. And I know that drones are way cheaper, but there is an establishing shot showing Milan from above, and it's a standard drone, but it corrects its push after 2 seconds or something. So you're getting the push, and suddenly it slightly moves and it's pushing in again. It's just really bothering me, and I'm not sure why it didn't bother other people in the process of shooting and editing it. Like, the shots of Paris in the original are standard fare helicopter establishing shots, but they don't change direction in an unusual way. Both movies have choppy ADR in places too, and I know from experience how hard it is to do sound on location, and shooting outside in New York with Anne Hathaway must have been a nightmare for getting clean sound with all the people trying to watch, and New York is noisy, and yada yada. What really made me look for it is we have a lot of strong sound mix moments right at the start of the movie, with Stanley Tucci delivering a line that sounded like it was from a recording studio and not the middle of the red carpet in Italy. Followed immediately by Anne Hathaway on a microphone at the awards banquet, which just felt like too much effect to make it sound like you were in the room, but there isn't enough room to make it whole. Again, these are just things that would have driven me nuts, so I feel like I should mention them, but as I say often, it's extremely difficult to make a movie, and it's never perfect, and little things happen, and there are often perfectly good reasons why things end up the way they are, but it did drive me nutty. The second thing is the soundtrack, and I know we don't have the same market for the official movie soundtrack on CD to defer the cost of the music anymore, and I know getting Lady Gaga in the movie with 3 original songs was probably doing something to the music budget elsewhere, but the music in this movie is not the same as the original, and it doesn't do anything propulsively for the action on screen. They recreate the opening with Andy getting ready and jaunting through the streets of New York, and before it was Suddenly I See by KT Tunstall, and this time I have no idea what the song was. Even if it's just not me not being up on the latest music, the song didn't do anything for the moment. Suddenly I See is new beginnings, fresh starts, ridding yourself of the old baggage, all with a beat that makes you want to move. You literally feel like you were moving with Andy because of the song. This didn't do it, and I think it didn't shoot me right like Suddenly I See did, which hurts the pace of the movie overall. I mean, the Gaga song was good, but I don't think it was shot as it could have been. Just an overall imbalance between the timing and attitude and the music and what's happening on screen. And you are? Well, they call me the Leaderboard. I'd imagine there will be many people who enjoyed the first movie who won't enjoy going to the second. It keeps everything in alignment. The cast is all great. The writing is just as capable as it was in the first movie. And all around, everyone did a great job. David Frankel cinematically gave us that friend that we haven't seen in a long time, where it feels like no time has passed when you see them again. All that said, I don't know many people who enjoyed the first movie who will say that this is better than that. If I had to give it a rating, I would give it a 7.5. It is incredible to have the cast back, to have a new check-in on the world of magazines as they lose the cachet they had 20 years back. It really is a lot of fun. And I think there will be a lot of fans who will be happy with what they turned out. I was a big fan of the movie when it was first released, and I was excited to see it this weekend as well. I don't know what the future may hold for the story, but if they decide to come back again, I will be there. Just don't expect me in any designers. Thank you so much for watching. I have a very special episode of Roadshow next week where I will tell you what it's like to do a red carpet at the world famous Chinese theater in Hollywood, which means it's time for me to go buy a suit. Have a great week, everybody.